Hello and welcome, autodidactics and awesome people. Thank you for joining me. My name's Campbell. This is Autodidactic Channel. And today we're going to have a look at Sydney and the layout of Sydney, because I've been checking out the harbour and all the different points around and what's on them. And to me, this place looks like an old star city. We have remnants of the old stars and satellite stars all along the harbour. So let's get in and see if Sydney is really an old world star city. Okay, so this is Sydney. This is Sydney Harbour, the largest natural harbour in the world. And as you can see, I've already pinpointed quite a few different areas here. And as you'll see, they're all either on the points of land or a couple of them are actually islands. So we're going to go along and see what's there. So to start with, we'll go down to Blue Poles Reserve. And as we zoom in, you will see there's some kind of old structure here. Okay, look at this completely, man-made straight wall, obviously right-angled edge here. And there's actually a doorway in here. So if we go down, you'll see, apart from the fact that we've got these old blocks in the ground, and you can see here, it looks like the wall. Look, these look like the tops of a wall that continues. You see that through here. And when we turn around, what do we have but a door going under the ground? Now, I haven't looked into the history of this, but no doubt they're going to tell us it was some kind of fort, right, for war. Now, keep in mind that there's never been, at least in recent history that we know about, there's never been a war on Australian soil. Right? We've never been invaded. But Sydney felt the need to build all these forts all around the harbour for some reason, or at least that's the explanation they give us. So we can see in here some old brickwork here on the top, and these look like megalithic blocks, right? Very large blocks that have been covered, because we can see a line here, like a join. We can see there's a join along here. Okay, and this looks like this brick here is a bit degraded, but this, you can sort of follow this line through, right? Another line there. So it looks like covered up brickwork, but look at this door going straight under the ground. What is that about? So was this some kind of old star? Because to me, that's what it looks like. Even on the ground down here, you can see this is all stone. It's just got a bit of a covering of dirt on it. Like I said before, we can see the wall popping through the ground here. And this is all walled off and raised as well. And even the shape, as you can see, it comes around here. It is reminiscent of the star shape, isn't it? With all these angles that we see. So this is Blue Point Reserve. Obviously not much here. They've done a lot of cleanup, or, we don't know what condition they found this in, how long it had been sitting here, how much was actually left. But why would there be a door under this reserve? And here we are on Wikipedia to get the narrative, the mainstream narrative of what they want us to think. It's just got a little bit about what it is now, and here's the history. And this is all there is. That's all there is on it, right? History, Blue Points was named after Billy Blue, a convict who arrived in Sydney on the Minorca, 14th December 1801, transported for stealing a bag of sugar. And then this whole section here is just about this Billy Blue guy and what he did. There is no mention at all of any fort or any construction being there at all. So why do we see this big structure that goes under the ground with a door going under the ground, and all the megalithic blocks and bricks and work that we can see there? There's no explanation for this at all, but yet it's there. So that's the first point, Blue Poles, and I've called it Starfield here, but you can see definitely, look at this. That's where the door is. This is a little viewing deck. This here is a tower, a metal tower. Interesting place to put it. And even on the edge, you can see these are all man-made edges. And this little nook in here, again, kind of looks suspiciously like what we see in the star forts. But unfortunately, actually. And so if we go down to the point and have a look, what do we see? But a big old world stone wall. Again, no mention of this being built or who built it, but it's definitely there. So you can see the whole bit is raised up, this middle bit, which again is what we see in the stars. And this clearly man-made shoreline again, right, out of rather large rocks, rocks that have been hewn into blocks. Not sure what these dots here are, these holes. But again, 1801 is when they said the first person came here, Billy Blue. So who built this wall and how? How were they laying bricks underwater, right? And of course, Australia founded by convicts, basically. And the story is that everything was built by convicts. This here looks like cement, modern cement that they've put in there, just to add this little jutting piece, this probably because the old wall had crumbled here a bit, so they've put a new top on it, laid some cement there. Here are the old world bricks or blocks. And as you can see, it goes the whole way down. All man-made shorelines. And here are some services going underground. So again, you lift these covers and that would go underground. So what is underneath this is another question. From there, we can have a look at Goat Island. Interesting name. And again, this is all man-made shorelines, right? Right angles, man-made shorelines. What looks like some huge bricks here. Like, look at this. This is just, a rectangle, right? An angle that had been wrecked. And so let's go in and have a bit of a look of what we can see. So this building here, not flat, raised up off the ground, and it's got a little tower coming up the top. So is this old or new? I'm not sure. It's definitely a brick building, but this little tower-esque thing makes me wonder how long it's been there and if it's just a repurposed old world building. And when we look around, we can see this in the ground, right? This, no doubt what they're going to call a pathway. So number one, it's not very wide, right? It's not a very wide pathway, and it doesn't look like it's been laid as a pathway, right? It looks like, no, it's not uniform. It's not straight on the edge. It looks like, maybe the top of a worn down wall that's still showing through the ground. So we'll go and get another angle here. And again, you'll see we have what looks like the remnants of an old wall here, right, being built up. But you can see block work in here. This is clearly man-made. And again, the whole middle section is raised, as we see everywhere. And again, here's another bit of an old, looks like an old world wall. They'll probably tell us it's natural rock, but you know what they like to say, right? They like to tell us fibs or porkies, as we used to call them in Australia. Porky pies, lies. I mean, you can see here as well, this edge. There's a nice little angle in there. This looks like it's raised to a point, like there's something buried in there. But again, here, a wall, right? So this is all raised up off the ground, off, the bottom level of the island. And if we come around to this side, this is where, yeah, this big block is. But as you can see, that this clearly, nature doesn't make straight up lines and right angles, right? And so that again, looks like a man-made, feature. And here's another one here. Okay, so again, is this the remnants of an old star? Because as we can see, as with all the rest of the banks, the edges of the The river in Sydney Harbour, this is all man-made. Okay, and this end bit you can see quite, reminiscent of what we see in stars, right? Can you see that shape there? And another bit coming off it there. So Goat Island, remnant of a star. Let me know in the comments what you think. And here we are on National Parks, New South Wales, Goat Island, owned by the Sydney Harbour National Park people. And a bit on Goat Island. Now, as we come down, there's not a lot about it, but the history says that since European settlement, Goat Island played an important and fascinating role in the development of Sydney's cityscape. In the 1800s, the island was used as a home for convict work gangs and as a gunpowder storage depot. Always convicts. The Queen's magazine, and a magazine is just where they store gunpowder, or used to, which stands on Goat Island, was built in the 1830s by convicts. Of course it was. That's what you do. You send unskilled thieves and murderers to build the place where you're going to store the gunpowder. Does that even make sense? So it was built using sandstone quarried from the eastern side of the island. It was used to store explosives, and beside it, there's a barracks, cooperage, and kitchen. So they are saying there was a barracks there and a magazine. So they are admitting that there were constructions there back in the 1800s, but they don't explain why there's man-made shorelines around this island and why there's, what looks like walls under the ground. The middle bit of it's all raised up. And of course, those huge blocks that we saw on the water's edge, and none of that ties in with this story here. So again, was there something else there, or do you believe, the narrative that they sent thieves and murderers to build a storage place for everything explosive that they had? I mean, that just doesn't make sense, right? Silliness. So is this maybe the remnants of a star, a star fort, as they are called? And of course, they love to call them forts because everything's about war for these people. But stars were not about war; they weren't forts. And this is Ballast Point. So this is just off the island we just looked at, Goat Island. So Ballast Point. Now the story is in the 1800s, they were getting ballast, for ships. They don't say what it was though, so I'll have a look at that in a minute. But just look at the shape of this. Clearly, again, man-made edges. This raven-shaped piece at the front here, and just look at this. All these different levels coming up here. Very reminiscent of a star fort. Obviously, all rather large brickwork. And there's also something interesting up here that looks like this looks like an old fountain. And this is obviously new, but this looks like it's built on some remnants, right, on a base of something. So we'll just go have a quick look. You can see this has all been covered in cement slurry, right? And underneath we have bricks popping through where the cement's fallen off. So this, again, I mean, and what's the use for it, right? It's just a raised circle. It looks like an old fountain to me. Is that what it is? It definitely, is built of bricks. We can see bricks down here and then covered up. So the story for Ballast Point is the history between 1788 and 1800. The point was used as a fishing and hunting ground for European settlers and as a source for ballast for ships returning unladen to Europe. So ballast is bricks, is basically what they used to use. Bricks or, things that were made for, to be ballast. They didn't, just like shovel dirt into the front of these boats. And ballast is just, when there's no cargo on the ships, it's just to hold them lower in the water. So what were they using as ballast is the first question, right? Were they literally deconstructing what was there and using the bricks as ballast? Because, what else were they using? That doesn't make a lot of sense. There's no explanation at all there. It says in 1880, the point was part of a 223 hectare or 550 acre grant to Colonel Surgeon Dr. William Balmain. A year later, Balmain sold his entire holding to John Gilchrist for 5 shillings, and the area became known as Gilchrist Place. In 1833, Gilchrist transferred power of attorney to Frederick Parbury, who 3 years later commissioned surveyor John Armstrong to lay out subdivisions. The survey formed the basis of sales between 1836 and 1841. So they're saying they turned it into housing. And then again, sold again only 7 months later. Ballast Point was sold to Andrew Blowers Smith and Henry Smith for £500. Land was advertised for sale in 1842, but the severe colonial depression forced the withdrawal of the sale. Then it gets sold a few more times. In 1864, it says they built the only house thought to have existed on the site, Menevia. From this point until 1875, the site was known as Menevia Point after the residents, and from 1884 to 1928 was known as Perkins Point. Then from 1893 to 1915, it was a boarding house, still operated as such into the 1920s. By 1928, it had fallen into disrepair. So all they tell us about this place is they were using it for ballast. They don't tell us what the ballast is. And then there was a boarding house, or a house that turned into a boarding house built there. So nothing at all about all this brickwork that we see here. Look at this edge here too, right? Again, very reminiscent of star forts. And you can see it comes all the way back here on, you know, a funny point, right? We've got this chunk of land, but then it's got this popping out that just as well happens to be on a huge stone wall. So who built this? There's no explanation as to who built any of this. I mean, and what the ballast was. It clearly, look, we can clearly see an old structure there. It definitely is reminiscent of a star with all the shapes and angles that we see on it. And there's, all they tell us is they were getting ballast from here. So they were, you know, they were taking the block work. So there you go. So is every point on Sydney Harbour some kind of old world star? Because that's where we see them, right? We see these stars on the points of rivers and bays and things. And here's another one. This is all housing. You can see man-made shoreline all that way. And of course, this would have been flooded. And, you know, the star fort builders were probably at least 2 epochs ago. So, you know, they're all quite old. They're covered. They've been through catastrophes. Here we have another man-made island. Look at the man-made edges. All of this, there's no explanation for this. Down here again, man-made edges, right? And look at this shape, right? Again, very reminiscent of what we see on what are called star forts. So this whole area, there's not much here. So it's not every single point, but so many of them. And the islands look like old star forts. Now this one, they tell us was a fort. And this looks like, you know, these satellite stars that we see, these sort of small stars around. But again, you know, we've got sea walls here. You know, look at this turret. I mean, it's a castle turret, right? Probably, I don't know, maybe used to be a lighthouse or whatever lighthouses are. I'm not sure. Maybe it was, maybe this is just the top of something much larger. But this is Sydney, Australia. Again, look at this. Clearly all man-made edges around here and in here, and no explanation to who built this when it was built. Even down here on this large bit, we see more man-made edges around here and here. Obviously, you know, lots of housing in this, but here's another wall down there right into the river. So this stuff is everywhere. Here's another one. Here's the remains of some construction. All the way around, you know, here again, built right into the rocks, into the cliff. Okay, and of course, this isn't a photo, this is Google, but you can see old world walls here, all stone. Looks like there might have been a doorway or something here. There's definitely a doorway there. Okay, so all over Sydney Harbour. Of course, the Opera House is sitting again on man-made edges, and we know there was a fort there, Fort Macquarie, that used to sit here, which was a castle, basically, and then that got turned into, they say, they say they knocked it over and built a tram station just a little bit behind it, but I've done a video on that, and you can see that it looks like they dug that tram station out because it as well, it looks like a castle. And then they knocked the whole lot over and they put this Sydney Opera House on top of it. But the whole point here, like as far as the point of land, not the point I'm trying to make, and that as well, actually, the whole point to all of this is these are man-made edges constructed, and there's no story for how it was done. And under here, under this end of the Harbour Bridge, there was a battery, Dawes Point Battery, which they say was built in the late 1700s. It was obviously knocked over to build this bridge. So they admit there was a fort here and a fort here. Of course, you know, that they always call them forts. So this is Bennelong Point and Battery Marina. So here's another point, and I just zoomed in because I saw all this construction coming down the hill, and it's the same thing, right? Man-made walls going around here. This one, you know, sitting up off the water. Probably can't zoom in too much here, but you know, there's some interesting shapes and shadows in there. Got a pool here, got massive old world stone walls by the looks of it. And of course, up here we have an old world Tartarian building, and it's raised. Look at this, it's raised up off the ground here. So this whole thing is stepped. Look, this is an old wall here as well. So the whole thing is built up, and again, man-made edges. So just again, that look and feel of an old world star fort. I know I won't go to every single point, but I'm sure you're sort of starting to see the picture of what I'm saying. Is this, you know, harbour, the whole harbour looks like it was man-made, all the edges man-made by a previous civilization. This is just a small island called Clark Island, and it's just basically for picnicking and hanging out. And you can see man-made edges. And if we zoom in a bit here, you can see brickwork here. And I don't know, are these bigger blocks? I'm not really sure. But also a bit of rubble around, lots of stone out here. And I've just gone down onto the island, and you can see this does look like, you know, very large blockwork, right? Look at the straight lines in between these two. It's not the best picture. I've got some old steps here. Some old, looks like some steps there that are just for no reason at all. Just half buried. And what's that? Not sure what that is, but that looks interesting. And here we are down on the point, and you can see this is a man-made stone wall. Okay. And it looks like it goes all the way down here. Here we have Shark Island, and, you know, just not much here again, a bit of a sort of nature reserve, but this bit here is quite interesting, isn't it? Look at all these right angles. These look like actual just large blocks down here. This all looks like old blockwork, right? Not sure what, you know, foundation, an old wall, I'm not sure. But in here as well, you can see there's an old wall coming around the side. So some interesting features on this as well. And if we move up here, we're heading out towards the ocean here. So it's got a couple more I want to show you. This one's called Steel Point. And they do say there was a battery here. And as you can see, interesting shape, right? We've got this, you know, they say these are turrets for cannons. You know, you find these everywhere, these kind of circular things. So I'm not sure exactly what they were originally. And I'm pretty sure this is Steel Point Cottage. There's a Steel Point Cottage up here. It may be this, I'm not exactly sure, but you can see in here, you know, the different, like there's walls in here, different land levels down into here as well. So down at ground level, and you can see this is the turret that we were looking at. So it looks like it's made from brick, I think. It's hard to see what size they are. And, you know, the above walls and that may have been made of brick, but I'm pretty sure the whole structure was an old world structure. As you can see in here, there's another half circle that may have been where the gun sat, some steps. But I mean, if you put a gun through here, through this bit here, not going to get much of an angle, are you? Like, because this, you can see, is in front of this cutaway. So they're going to be saying the gun sat through there, you know, so they weren't so exposed. But wouldn't you be wanting pointing there? Maybe there wasn't trees, but I mean, you can't move, right? You can only cover like this area. So that's interesting, and interesting that on the other side, there's another cutaway. So was this, you know, used for something else originally? And so down in the front here, you know, melted old world megaliths, right? Mega blocks over here. Oh, this chevron type cut, you see that quite a bit as well around. Down here we have some interesting rocks. It's just interesting shapes on them. In here as well, you can see these all kind of look like megalithic blocks. I'm not sure, but I'll show you the next place I want to show you is really what sort of sparked my interest in making this video. And here it is at the entrance almost to Sydney Harbour, South Head. North Head's a bit more into the ocean, but South Head here, now they do say that this was a fort, right, for World War II. And, you know, we have, you know, the similar features, those rounded bits in the ground. We've got a nice old world lighthouse here. And down here, you can see more of those round things that we looked at before. But what really sparked my interest was this little bit of shoreline here. Is this also traces of, you know, a previous megalithic civilization in Australia? Because these definitely all look like blocks. And of course, you know, geologists will tell us they're not, and there's some reason. But I find it very interesting. And, you know, with all the evidence we've been finding over the last few years, it wouldn't surprise me at all. There's another block there. If this was just an old world structure, you can see just all the rubble and the outside of the walls fallen off. And of course, they reuse the bits, or they don't reuse them because this was never used. You know, none of these forts were ever used in a war. I mean, in Australia, in Sydney, we've never been attacked. So all these forts, you know, they serve no purpose. They don't make sense at all, right? But they're there and they need a story. So they tell us, of course, it's all for war. So there you go, Sydney Harbour. And as you can see, I mean, there's just points everywhere. Some of them, you know, I've marked quite a few of them, but I'm sure that, you know, on probably all of these points, there'll be remnants of something, because they love to build on the ocean, right, on the water to get the current. And there's probably, you know, there's tons of old world Tartarian buildings in Sydney City around here. And it just looks, you know, like a man-made harbour completely, but there's no explanation. There's no pictures of them making this, or how, you know, they stopped the river flowing back in the 1800s to dig it out or whatever. You know, there's no story for any of this or any of these structures apart from, you know, it was built in a year back in the, you know, 17 or 1800s, stood for 10 or 20 years, and then they knocked it over. That's literally the story for most of them, apart from the ones that have been redesignated forts from World War II. Fort Denison's probably the only one left from the old world that they actually have a story from, you know, from the 1800s for. But the rest, there's really nothing. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one. A look at a new, what we call a new world city, but is it an old world city? Because I believe all cities with the Tartarian buildings and, the certain markers that we look for, the canals, etc., they are all old world cities. And we've just come in and, well, not us, but, the civilization we're a part of has just built on top of them. And unfortunately, a lot of it's been destroyed and hidden and remarked to trick us, to teach us a different story rather than the true story of the past. So don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, share this around if you enjoy my work. And also, if you'd like to support me, you'll find links below. There's some, tuning forks. You can go to our shop where we have natural remedies there. And there's also some really cool books down there, hardcovers of how to live off grid, how to do things yourself, make food, build structures, get, energy, all these types of things that we really all need to know and may need in the future. All right. Best to be prepared. So thanks for spending some time with me. Stay awesome, and I'll talk to you all on the next upload. Bye for now.
Remember, in the end, nobody wins unless everybody wins. Come